Do you know your local demon names? It might come in handy if they're ever trying to get you. Welcome to Dodo's Horrorness, where we share our horror passion with you. Horror master James Wan returns to give us a sequel to The Conjuring. Will it get as many gore points as the first one? Let's find out. Just like the first movie, we get a great opening here at the Amityville Horror House. The Warrens are investigating, and the first shot of the movie is a zoom in on Vera Farmiga's face, confirming that she really is that attractive. She sees the murders happen in the perspective of the killer. We get some great scenes here where she's walking past mirrors and we see her, but on the reflection, we see the reflection of the killer. I think that's done very well. She sees a little boy that kind of runs away from her and she starts chasing him and he takes her down to the basement. So down here is where we meet the nun. She sees her in the reflection of a mirror, and whenever she turns around, she's not behind her. And she keeps going back and forth from mirror to behind her, and she's always in the mirror but never behind her. But on the last time she turns, she's actually right in front of her and she begins to choke her. They do a zoom out and it's actually just her own hands choking her. She turns around and she sees somebody's silhouette and they're getting stabbed from the back, and this really freaks her out because her visions usually come true. We move on from the USA and we go to where the main story is going to take place, which is London. We get some cliche shots of London as well as the song London is Calling on the background as well. We meet our main character, Janet. She's at school sitting with a friend who's smoking a cigarette, but Janet was not planning on smoking a cigarette because she's a good kid and good kids do not get possessed by demons. Or do they? We meet the rest of the family and Mom is upset because she doesn't have any bloody money for biscuits. The siblings in this movie are a little bit more forgettable than in the first one, but that's just because the story is told differently. The first one is a whole family getting haunted, while this one is just one particular family member. The youngest boy of the family has a stutter as well as a tent that he has in the middle of the hallway. It's full of toys that a demon might have fun with. We see Janet with a Ouija board that her and her no-good cigarette smoking friend made at school. Her and her sister began to play with this Ouija board, and this is where they messed up because after this, that's where everything goes down. The first night after playing that Ouija board, Janet wakes up and she's in the downstairs living room. She wakes up and she just assumes that she's sleepwalking and she goes back to bed. What I like about the Conjuring movies is that the demons do not play. They get started quick as soon as the movie starts. We get a scene with the Warrens and they're on live TV talking to some people, and one of them is a non-believer. We see that Ed does not give a what, and he was ready to throw down on live TV with this guy that was calling his wife a liar. We meet the Crooked Man and a toy that Janet uses to help her little brother with his study. Because unlike her no-good cigarette smoking friend, she's a good kid and good kids do not get possessed by demons. Later that night, Janet wakes up her older sister because she's having a dual conversation with herself, one with her voice and one with a deeper voice. We see her staring into a corner because ghosts are shy the first few nights. But Mr. Wilkins is not an ordinary ghost and he does not want them here because this is his house. Janet goes back to bed as well as her sister. And in one of the best decisions I've ever seen in any horror movie, her sister is about to turn off her lamp and she decides not to and goes to bed with the light on, which is a very good choice because everybody knows that lamps are a demon's worst nightmare. We then see little brother go get a drink of water and he passes by his creepy tent. When he makes it back to his room, he hears something, and when he looks, out of the tent comes out a fire truck with the sirens on and he gets freaked out. He doesn't know what happened, so he grabs the toy and he approaches the tent. He pushes it slowly into the tent, only for the truck to come back and freak him out, and he goes back to his mom, who comes out and she's looking everywhere but she can't find nothing. They hear some noises coming from the first floor and they go investigate, and it's Janet who's sitting on the chair in the living room where she woke up earlier. They wake her up and she has no idea how she got there. The next day, Janet is home from school because she's feeling a little bit under the weather and she's now home alone. She gets into a TV remote battle with Mr. Wilkins because they both have different tastes in TV shows. She sees the TV remote floating in the air and then it drops, freaking her out completely, giving the first round to Mr. Wilkins. Throughout the movie, we see Mr. Wilkins sitting in that chair or that chair moving or something happening with that chair, so you know that that's important to him. We go back to the Warren's house and Ed shows us once again that there is nothing he can't do because now he's showing off his artistic skills. He draws a picture of a dream he had and it's the nun that Lorraine had seen previously. Back to London and we see Janet and she's tying herself to the bed because she doesn't want to sleepwalk anymore. It works because she wakes up in the middle of getting pulled and now she gets one back on Mr. Wilkins, so it's now tied 1-1. Mr. Wilkins is a sore loser and gets mad because he got outsmarted here. He starts terrorizing the kid in her own bedroom. We get some more great child acting here while Janet's being terrorized by Mr. Wilkins. He's so upset that she outsmarted him that he actually bites her and starts destroying the room all around her. The mom hears everybody screaming, so she runs into the room to see what's going on. And at first, it looks like Mr. Wilkins is going to make these girls look like a liar because there's nothing moving. But as soon as the mom tells him something, he just throws the bed across the room. I do like that Mr. Wilkins did that because he does not care that the parents there and he doesn't make the kids look like liars. The whole family takes off running after this and they go across the street to a friend's house. Two police officers show up and they're about as useless as Lana Del Rey's mask during COVID. They see a chair move across the room and that's enough for them to leave and tell them that there's nothing that they can do, but they do mention that they might have somebody that could help them. Back at the Warrens, and we get my favorite scene in the whole movie. Whenever Lorraine goes and sees what her daughter was looking at, she points across the hall and you see the nun standing there. This is the first time we see the nun completely from head to toe, and it is such a creepy entity. I love the way that they made her look. She then starts walking to the left of the hallway, and Lorraine follows her into the study room where we see the painting of the nun that Ed did earlier. The eyes on this painting shine just enough to where it plays tricks on you whether it's the real one or not, but that's just a painting when she turns the lights on. While she's there, creepy music starts playing from a record player that she has, and she goes to turn it off. And then you see one of the best scenes in all of the Conjuring movies, which is you just see the shadow of the nun and it's kind of moving across the walls and it's making its way down to the painting. You see the shadow go behind the painting and then it just kind of turns around and it's the perfect silhouette with the painting. From the painting, you see her hands come out of the side of the painting and then she launches at Lorraine. When she gets up, she sees the nun and she's kind of standing in the corner behind something and she's screaming at her, "Who are you? What's your name?" trying to get any information. The nun points over at a corner and when Lorraine looks, it's Ed getting impaled by that piece of wood that she saw earlier, so it was her husband this whole time. We then get a TV reporter, Maurice, and he's there to investigate what's going on with the family. They show a little montage of the neighbors talking about what they've seen, and they're making big headlines in the London news. They do have, of course, skeptics that are non-believers, and we get to meet one of them here, which is who I think is the real villain of this story. They go to the house and they're going to record the family to see if they can catch some of the evidence on tape. While recording, we hear Mr. Wilkins' voice coming out of Janet while they're recording her. He tells us the worst knock-knock joke in movie history. He tells them that this is his house again, and he also tells them that he died in that chair when he was 72 years old. The family's still sleeping over at the neighbor's house, and one of the nights we see the little boy get up to let their dog out. While he's trying to let the dog out, you see this Rottweiler anamorph into the Crooked Man and start chasing this boy. He runs back to the family and the whole family wakes up and they see as the Crooked Man slowly starts to turn into Janet. She starts talking in a really creepy voice and then she starts to scream and stuff goes flying all over the house. I love how James Wan is able to come up with 3 different entities for one movie. We have Mr. Wilkins, we have the Nun, and we have the Crooked Man, while other horror movies can't even come up with one good one. The recording of Mr. Wilkins' voice coming out of Janet gets the attention of the Warrens and they decide that they are going to go and help them because that's what they do. They go to London to meet the family and they get shown around the house. They show that the room where the girls used to sleep is now locked with chain and key. Whenever they get into the room, they see that all the walls are covered with Catholic crosses that the mom says that people donated over time. It looks really creepy and it looks like a really good setting for a final demon showdown. Lorraine and Janet are sitting outside talking and they're having a competition to see who's the weirder one out of the two. They go back and forth between "I don't have any friends" to "my parents never believed me" to I haven't slept in days" to "the only person that believed me, I married them." But at the end, Janet wins because she tells him, "Oh yeah, well I see a demon right now and it's telling me that it wants to hurt you." The following scene is another great scene that rivals the scene with the nun earlier at the Warrens' house. We see that the Warrens want to talk to Mr. Wilkins, but he's a little shy, so he tells them that the only way he'll talk to them is if they all turn around. They sit Janet in the chair where Mr. Wilkins died, and she takes a sip of water to make sure that it's not her doing the voice. In this shot, we see Ed in the foreground and then Janet sitting behind him, but she's blurry, just enough to where you can make her out. And then while Ed is talking to Mr. Wilkins, you kind of see her body kind of transform into the shape of an old man, to the point where you can see his mouth moving and talking as Mr. Wilkins. I like the scene because from this interview to the last one, you see that Mr. Wilkins has some kind of sense of humor. In this one, Ed asks him, "Do you know who I am?" And he says, "Yes, you're Ed. Eddie. Edward." He's kind of like just joking around with him. And then Ed tells him like, "Oh, just Ed is fine." And then he shows him a crucifix and then Mr. Wilkins starts to freak out and then he leaves her body. And then you see the transition back from Mr. Wilkins into Janet once again. And whenever the camera focuses on her, you see her kind of pull her head up and then spit the water out. While the Warrens are there, they want to stay at the house. So they ask Mom and they ask Janet to stay there with them just to see if there's anything that happens while they're there. We see Janet and once again she's tying herself to the bed. You can tell that she's so terrified, and this scene kind of makes it a little bit sad because she hasn't slept in days, and you can just see it in her face how terrified she is. She tells her mom that she wasn't planning on smoking that one time when she got in trouble. Her mom tells her that she believes her because she's a good kid. Unfortunately, I was wrong, and good kids do get possessed, so be careful out there. The rope doesn't work this time, and she starts to levitate to the ceiling, and then you see a really cool scene where she goes through the ceiling into that creepy room, making it now 2-1 to Mr. Wilkins. Whenever she wakes up in that room, she sees that all the crosses around her are starting to turn upside down, and then she gets attacked by Mr. Wilkins. They hear all the screaming, and the mom comes and she opens the door, and obviously it's locked with chains still, so she's trying to help her daughter through just the crack of the door. The Warrens come and they finally open the door, and when they do, they see that she's being attacked by a curtain. She's just wrapped around a curtain, and they just kind of free her from that. Unfortunately for Janet, the Warrens haven't seen any proof of a demon attacking her. They just saw her getting attacked by a curtain. The villain of the story comes back and she tells the Warrens that she thinks that they are making it all up just for fame and money. The Warrens, not seeing anything, are becoming a little bit skeptical. While the villain is telling them what's going on and why she thinks it's a hoax, the Warrens do tell her like, nah, you know what, we do believe him and we are going to keep helping them. They go back to the family, and Ed decides that he's going to sing them a song. He sings Can't Help Falling in Love by Elvis. While he's singing this song, they show the TV reporters as well as the villain of the movie setting up cameras all over the place to try to get some evidence. We get a funny scene here where you see Ed pick up a camera, and it's like an over-the-shoulder camera, big old camera, and he's like, oh my god, it's so small and light. Which gets a huge random gore point for Patrick Wilson because he's awesome as Ed. The next scene, however, doesn't get a gore point. It actually gets a bore point because it drags on just a little bit too long. The mom tells Ed that there's something leaking in the basement, and he says that he can try to go fix it. When you get to the basement, you see that it's flooded almost to waist level, which makes for a good location for a horror movie. The only thing here is that you see Ed, and he gets to where he's supposed to be fixing, and from behind him, you see an entity appear, but it just takes so long. Had it been like a really short scene with this scene, it would have been just fine, but I just think it drags a little bit too long. When Ed turns around and the entity's gone, the mom looks down in the water and she sees Mr. Wilkins in the water. He gets up and bites her arm, but Ed never sees Mr. Wilkins bite her. I like how everything that's happened so far in this movie has only been seen by the family itself, and everybody that they're trying to prove a point to has not seen anything yet. They all hear some noises coming from the house, so they all run up there, and then the doors are locked, and they see furniture flying everywhere through the window. They see tables and chairs and kitchen supplies flying through the air. When they finally go into the house, they can't find Janet anywhere, and they keep looking for her, and they find her inside of this little tiny closet where she kind of has to like pretzel herself in there, and they're not sure how she got there, but they get her out of there. And then the villain of the story, she comes in and says, hey guys, this has been a fake the whole time. We caught her on camera. I don't like this scene because whenever they go into the house, they see the furniture flying. They can see everything that's going on. Yet, they believe this lady when she tells them that it's a fake and that it's Janet that's been faking it. But if it was realistic, you would think, how can a little girl be throwing all this furniture around like that? They just never think about that, and they just take it as, okay, well, we have proof that it's a fake, so we have to leave. There's nothing else we can do here. They tell the mom that, and she kicks them out, tells them that, they've been no help, and the Warrens leave, and they say it's not that they don't believe them, but they don't have the proof. And with that video that shows her throwing the stuff around, then the Vatican's going to pull them out, and they're not going to let them work with this family anymore. You see the villain of the story, and she's just super snooty here, and I just don't like this character at all. But I get why she's in the story. I haven't talked enough about Maurice, but he gets a gore point here because he's the only one that's sticking with this family, and it's the only one that truly believes them. So good on you, Maurice. As the Warrens are leaving, Ed gets the idea that the two different tapes that they have from Mr. Wilkins might connect to each other, and he tries it, and it plays a recording of him saying that something will not let him go. As soon as they hear this, Lorraine finally gets the vision that she was looking for this whole time. She sees Mr. Wilkins sitting on the chair, and he's talking about wanting to go back to his family. She tells him that she can leave, and he says that he can't. And then from behind him, you see the nun standing there. Mr. Wilkins gives Lorraine a clue on how she can defeat the nun. I like that this demon is actually really smart because it's using Mr. Wilkins as a ghost for this family to think that, it's just a simple ghost, when in reality it's actually looking to possess one of their own kids, and at the same time it's using the kids and telling the kids to lie to certain people, or that it will hurt their families if they don't listen to him. So this demon actually came with a game plan. Janet tells her siblings that she did in fact fake the whole incident because the demon told her that if she didn't, the demon was gonna hurt them. Proving that it was her throwing all this furniture around, which I don't know what's in the water in London, but this kid was throwing really heavy furniture all over the place, and everybody just seemed to believe it. Everybody goes outside except for Janet, and all the doors lock, and she's just trapped in there by herself. She goes full on possessed with nobody there to help her. The Warrens figure out the riddle that Mr. Wilkins gave him, which was actually, if you know the demon's name, then you have control over it. They make it back to the house, and whenever Ed tries to break in through a window, he gets a couch to the face, so he goes back down to the basement. He decides to break up through the basement into the house. While he goes in there, the door locks on him, and Lorraine's not able to go in there with him. And she starts to think about what Mr. Wilkins told her, and she realizes that she might actually have the information she needs. She recalls back at the time when she saw the nun for the first time at her own home, and she realizes that she does know the name of this demon. Whenever she asks, "What is your name?" the demon told her, and she wrote it down on her Bible. Well, kind of scribbled it on there. As she was freaking out, she just didn't pay attention to it. When she opens her Bible, she sees that it spells out the word Valak, and now she knows that that's the name of this demon. When Ed finally makes it through the floor and gets into the house, there's a set of pipes there that burst on him, and they just throw steam all over his face, making him blind for a little bit. As he's making his way through the house, I like to see him because he can't see anything, but we see everything that's around him. Lorraine is still outside with the newfound information that she needs. And while she's trying to find her way in, she sees an old tree. She sees a tree that was there at the house get hit by lightning, and then it breaks it. You see that the trunk that's left is in the shape of a spike, kind of like the one she saw in her vision, which tells her that her husband is about to fall through the window and onto that stick. So she runs around, and she finally breaks in through the basement and goes up the house. The final showdown happens in the room with all the crosses, and you see Jeanette, and she's standing in front of the window. It's like a 3-panel window, and you just see her with her arms out. All the windows just shatter in front of her, and it just flies towards her, and it gives her a few cuts like on her face. It's a really cool looking scene. And whenever the window is completely broken, she's standing right by it, and then you see the tree trunk that's right there in the outside. And then she's about to let herself go, but Ed manages to grab her on time, and then he's holding on to a curtain. You see that the curtain has some rings on top, and they're unhooking one by one. When Lorraine finally makes it to the room, she sees her husband, that he's about to fall with Janet, and then in the corner she sees Valak. Valak then throws her against the wall, but Lorraine's not going to go down without a fight because she has the information that she needs. When she gets up, she tells him that she knows his name and that she condemns him back to hell. He has no other option but to go back to hell because them's the rules. We see Valak, and this big old shadow appears around him, and it looks like he's kind of being tortured in a way, and you kind of get a glimpse of what his real form is, and he actually has like horns and everything, and then he just disappears, assuming he went back to hell. The following day, everybody is outside of the house. There's ambulances everywhere, and you get your cliche scene where people are sitting outside the ambulance with their little blanket on, and they're drinking some kind of juice or coffee or something. The family's liberated from this evil finally. Our girl Janet, she's been going through so much, she's probably going to pick up smoking after this. It's a happy ending, but not super happy, because then towards the end you get some Star Wars letters that are popping up like the Conjuring does, and then one of them says that in 2003 the mother still living in that house died in the same couch that Mr. Wilkins died, which is crazy if it's true, and crazier that they didn't get rid of that chair because they knew it was haunted from the beginning. So a happy ending for when it took place, not so happy after the letters told us what happened. That's the end of the movie, so how many gore points does this one get? Let's find out. At the end, The Conjuring 2 ends with 15 gore points and only 2 bore points, giving us a total of plus 13 points total. That's The Conjuring 2. If you guys want to join the flock and share your horror passion with us, please hit the subscribe button. I will be covering the third one, so hit that bell notification, that way you don't miss that video when it comes out. And let me know what you think.